quite as common sensey or stuff you kind of heard of or know about. This gets a little bit more involved. This gets a little more scientific, a little more, a little more tedious here. All right, let me get it to the big screen right here. Big screen right here. All right, now, right here, partial pressure. Okay, partial pressure of a gas is the pressure exerted by that gas. Partial pressure is symbolized by a little p. It's the pressure exerted by that gas in a mixture of gases. It is symbolized, and you'll see this term right here, it is symbolized by the lowercase p. Dalton's law, which I just mentioned this, you remember this? All of this is common sense right here. There's nothing hard about it. Dalton's law says each gas in a mixture of gases exerts its own pressure as if all the other gases were not present. That's Dalton's law. No big issue. I'm not going to ask you to repeat that. I'm not going to ask you to write it. But that's the way that goes. That's Dalton's law. Now right here, PO2. All right, partial pressure of oxygen at sea level. All right, sea level, 760 millimeters of mercury. 0.21% of the atmosphere is oxygen, so it's 160 millimeters of mercury. I might ask you to figure that, a partial pressure, give you a figure. I might say, okay, in fact, on one of your practice exam questions, on one of those practice exam questions on respiration, it has to do with the partial pressure of oxygen. What would be you have to figure it on one of those? All right, so on one of those, the partial pressure of oxygen, I have to give you the atmospheric pressure. Now you see, the PCO2 at atmospheric pressure is about 0.3 millimeters of mercury. That's PCO2, that's carbon dioxide. So CO2. So partial pressure means that each gas in a mixture of gases behaves as if the others were not even present. That's what partial pressure has to do with. This is why when you go up in when you or I go up in the mountains, and we go way up in the mountains and we get out of the car and we have a hard time breathing. We might notice it, and the old like they use Coumadin, they say blood thinner for Coumadin. Up in the higher atmospheres, they say the air is thin. And when somebody says the air is thin, what that really means is the partial pressure of oxygen is lower than what my body is used to. Therefore, when the partial pressure of oxygen is closer to the partial pressure in your lungs, the diffusion rate is slower. The diffusion rate is slower, and so the tissues are kind of screaming out a little bit. And your kidney responds by producing erythropoietin, blood cell levels increase to accommodate for the lower. Let's grab all that oxygen we can. And so this is what this has reference to, and that's pretty good right there. Pulmonary air volumes. This is one of the things that students hate. Medical students, I know, guys told me they hated when they did this and talked about partial pressures of gases. They were no more interested in that than flying to the moon. Our respiratory air volumes, but it's something you kind of have to look at. Is the respiratory air in other words, respiration, one inspiration and one expiration, which is usually about 12 per minute at rest. That's hard to gauge. If you try to count how many times you breathe in a minute, you're going to find yourself going. You'll find yourself going. If you try to count how many times you breathe, the best way to do that, Kimberly, is for somebody to be sitting beside you, watching television, and try to look at you from the side without you paying attention to them, and count how many times you breathe. That is the hardest thing to do, is to count the number of breaths per minute. Because you become conscious of it, and your breathing increases, or whatever. Or you want to impress somebody, so you try to slow it down. So you and I don't, just like you and I don't think about our heart rate. We don't think about our heart beating. We don't think about that. Okay? Now y'all try to get your pulse rates. We did pulses this morning. Check your pulse when you first wake up in the morning. See, mine's going pretty fast right now because I've been jumping around up here. My pulse rate right now, because if I were to count, well, it's not too bad. It's going to be pretty slow. It's coming on. It's not too bad. Anyway, respiration, if you think about it. All right, now watch this. A spirometer, I'll show you a spirometer. I'll show you a pulmonary function machine, and I'll show you a dry spirometer in that lab. Now, let me tell y'all something. If you get to work in a hospital, or you go to the hospital when you're nursing, get to know somebody who works in the respiratory area, and get somebody to hook you up to a pulmonary function machine. You won't have to pay for it. Get somebody that works there to hook you up to a pulmonary function machine and get you some pulmonary volumes. Say, let them hook you up to the machine, it's a computer, and let the computerized pulmonary function machine it'll give you a readout on the condition of your airways. You'll do certain things like this. You'll breathe normal. Then you'll do like this. You'll go, and you'll blow into it like that. And you'll do things like, and it'll give you a readout on the condition of your airways. That's pretty good to know. That's pretty good to know. All right, but it's pretty fun to know. It's just a fun thing. You know, how are my lungs? How are my lungs? Okay. All right, pulmonary volumes. Okay, tidal volume. Air moved in and out. This is hard to do. This is hard to do, to put a mouthpiece in your mouth and breathe normal. It's hard to do. You tend to want to do something not normal when you put that mouthpiece in your mouth and to get up the tidal volume. Normal tidal volume, that's the quantity of air moved into or out of the lungs during a normal breath. That's hard to measure. I've tried it. It's hard to do on a pulmonary function machine. You tend to want to cheat. You know, you tend to want to force it. And that's normally about 500 mLs. All right, now watch this. Inspiratory reserve volume. You know how you know inspiratory reserve volume? Did you ever play in a swimming pool with somebody and you're going to run a race, see how far you can go underwater? Did you ever do that? How far can you go underwater? All right, if you're going to go underwater, you wouldn't walk up to the edge of the pool, look at the birds fly, and just jump in, would you? No. You come up to the edge of the pool and you go like this. Or you might stand up like this first and you go. And then you go. That's inspiratory reserve volume. That's your inspiratory reserve volume. That inspiratory reserve volume, the volume that can be inhaled in addition to normal, quiet, tidal volume. That's inspiratory reserve. That's how long can you hold your breath. I was watching this thing on Harry Houdini the other day. I mentioned that in y'all's class, didn't I? Harry Houdini. I mentioned it in my 24. Harry Houdini was a famous magician at the turn of the 19th century. Houdini, he was doing these nobody could figure, like he'd tie himself up and jump in a tank of water. He'd let somebody tie him, he'd get out all this stuff. Harry Houdini. He died in 1924. You know what he died from? It's going to interest you. What he died from was, remember, there were no antibiotics in 1924. What he died from, a ruptured appendix. The kill people with a ruptured appendix with no antibiotics was peritonitis. Peritonitis set in. You know, the contents of the intestine spewing into the peritoneal cavity. Peritonitis, that's what killed people in those days from a ruptured appendix. No antibiotics. Bacteria spew into that sterile cavity, and peritonitis, inflammation, and it leads to sepsis or septic shock. The organs start shutting down. Boom. Harry Houdini died in 1924 from what now a person could live over if they had sense enough to get to the hospital, and most people would now if appendix burst. But anyway, right here, this is the inspiratory reserve volume. Normal in that you can inhale. Now it's about 3,000. In other words, normally this is about 3,000 cc's. Normally, about 3,000. All right. Now, so that is the volume. Now, expiratory reserve volume is the amount of air that can be forcefully exhaled. Now, this normally figures out about 1,200. Like, you know, there's going to be some residual volume left in it. You don't ever get it all out. All right. So that's the expiratory reserve volume. Now, here's what you need to know. Vital capacity, VC, is the maximum quantity of air that can be moved into and out of the lungs. Here's the vital capacity. That's the vital capacity. And some of you will get some good numbers on the dry spirometer. Some of you will get some very good numbers. You'll get some numbers about 5,000 or 6,000. I don't get that good of numbers. I mean, I blow into one of those dry spirometers, and I don't get numbers like I would like to get. I really don't. Now, some of you guys will get numbers about 5,500 to 6,000.